It's time for the Fast Five. And for the first time joining me in this segment is Rashna Campbell, the Melbourne City Councillor. Rashna, thank you so much for your time tonight and joining me on Bernardi. Are you familiar with the rules of the game?
Thanks for having me. I am.
All right, we've got 5 minutes on the clock. We've got 5 topics to cover, so let's get straight into it. ISIS brides, it's been in the news. Peter Dutton has slammed plans to bring them home to Australia. What do you make of this? Is it a good call, our responsibility, or should they stay where they are?
I think we've got to be sober but realistic about the security threat posed by these people. Women, young people, and some of them young men who've spent their entire lives with terrorists. We shouldn't underestimate the impact of that indoctrination. And of course it's convenient for them to say that they're renouncing that ideology now. Who wouldn't when they're faced between a Syrian camp or the comforts of the West? But how are we going to mitigate the threats of that indoctrination? I don't think we can. And we've got to look at what happened the last time we did this. When we repatriated suspected terrorists and trainee terrorists from Afghanistan, there were 25 of those. 19 ended up committing acts of terrorism. 9 of them were convicted. That's a significant risk and one I don't think the Albanese government should be taking.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you. I didn't know those statistics you just mentioned, but you know, the simple matter is everyone who went over there knew they were at war with the West and modernity. They didn't go there for a holiday, and now they want us to pick up the pieces from their bad call. Okay, there's another problem here for the government, and that's all eyes on whether the Stage 3 tax cuts, which have already been legislated, are going to be dumped. Is this Albo's no carbon tax moment, Rashna?
Look, I think this is fundamentally a question of trust. They went to an election promising us that these tax cuts were going to be delivered on. And let's be clear, although the Greens want to say this is a tax cut for billionaires, it's not. It's a tax cut for hard-working, aspirational Australians. And I want to see those people having more of their dollars in their pockets instead of in the government coffers. Because if we're serious about getting the budget back into surplus, and we should be, why isn't the Albanese government tackling the bigger problem, government waste? There's plenty of that. There are NDIS blowouts predicted under this government. Instead of reining in their spending, they want to attack the hard-working average Australian. And right now, when electricity bills, energy bills are going through the roof, when mortgage repayments are going up, Australians need those dollars back in their pockets. Someone earning $60,000, they're going to be $400 worse off if these tax cuts don't go through. And quite frankly, what Australian doesn't need that towards their energy bills right now?
That's exactly right. Very, very well said. And why isn't the government talking about cutting their own spending rather than taking more money from us? Okay, might be a difficult one. I can't ask my regular guest in this segment, Tina McQueen, because it involves her. The battle for the future of the Liberal Party as one of our favourites in the news. Simon Birmingham, he's a senator from South Australia, called Tina McQueen's resignation after she celebrated the political demise of moderate Liberals. I don't mind saying, Rashna, he's called for my resignation from the Liberal Party many times before I actually did resign. Should Tina go?
Well, what Ms McQueen said is she rejoiced in the loss of some of those seats because she didn't approve of the MPs that we had contesting the election there. And I think anyone who's rejoicing about losses for the Liberal Party anywhere in this country should think twice. Because let's be clear, in Victoria, where I am, we've lost Liberal strongholds like Higgins, like Kooyong, like Goldstein. And you know what that's left us with? 8 out of 39 seats in the House of Representatives in this state. I don't think there's anything to rejoice about there. And nor do I think that we want Teals, and in the case of Higgins, a Labor MP squatting in Liberal strongholds. The focus of the Liberal Party has to be on getting back those seats and making gains elsewhere in the outer suburbs, appealing to voters who we know share the values of the party, because anyone who's a true Conservative wants to see the Albanese government out, and the focus has to be on winning those seats back.
Yeah, okay, very well put, and I'm pleased to have an alternative view. I'll ask Tina that another time as well. Okay, let's jump across to the Ukraine for a moment, where the president there, Zelensky, has called for a preemptive strike against Russia in a speech to Sydney's Lowy Institute. It seemed a very aggressive call, and it suggested that there should be a move to a preemptive nuclear strike. What do you make of that?
Boy, did this speech get the Kremlin upset. So they interpreted it as a preemptive nuclear strike, just as you've said, Cory. But Zelensky's issued a statement today, and he said that is not at all what he was talking about. What he was talking about is the sort of preemptive action that could and should have been taken before Russia invaded the Ukraine. So this is when NATO countries, when the West, were talking about, at most, imposing some sanctions. And that clearly wasn't enough of a deterrent. So he says that the West should have done more. Do I think he's right? Absolutely. There's more that could have been done. For one, we could have properly armed the Ukraine so that Vladimir Putin knew that invading the Ukraine wasn't going to be a walk in the park. It wasn't going to be some 5-day exercise, that the Ukraine had the might and the strength of the West behind it. There are stronger messages we could have sent in a preemptive sense that would have sent this clear signal that Vladimir Putin needed to hear. The Ukraine is not Russia's for the taking.
Russia, can I just pick you up on this, right? I'm just going to extend this for 1 second. Words matter, and we're at a very tense time here, and I just thought that these words were interpreted as inflaming a already very bad situation. Your interpretation may be correct, but we've got to be a bit more circumspect about this, don't we?
Look, I think it's a really good point. Words do matter, and nobody wants to see a situation as sensitive as what we're seeing in the Ukraine escalated. So do I think Zelensky could have expressed himself better when he spoke to the Lowy Institute? Yeah, probably. But then again, I've never been in a war zone. I've never had to lead my country fighting off the might of Russia. So I'm going to give him the benefit on the doubt on this one. Absolutely. He could have been more precise and probably should have been more precise. But then again, what he's doing, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes, but gosh, am I glad that he has stayed as strong as he has.
All right, I'm getting the wind up because we're going to get through 5 topics and I've stretched it. Let's go into this one. Elon Musk has gone back to his proposed $44 billion offer to buy Twitter. I reckon we need him to restore free speech, so I'm celebrating this. What do you make of it?
Well, Musk and his supporters say that one of the main reasons he wants to acquire Twitter is to bring about some much-needed reform. And it certainly sounds like some of that reform could be really positive, in particular getting rid of the censorship, getting rid of the swing to the left and the removal of the counterbalance, the right opinions that we just don't hear as strongly. But let's be really honest, Twitter is a nasty place. I'm not on it, but a lot of our young people are. About a quarter of them. And that really worries me. I mean, Cory, when we grew up, people learnt about politics from discussions around the dinner table, from debating with friends. Instead, we've got young people who are just keyboard warriors. They go on Twitter, they hear the views that they already believe validated, and anyone who's got an opposing view, they attack them, or worse, they cancel them. If we're serious about doing the right thing by our kids, I reckon we shouldn't worry about who's going to own Twitter. We need to get our kids off Twitter.